Wherever you're at,
Bing,
I
bing.
hope you're having a good day today.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. A little throwback.
How long has this song existed?
I don't know.
It just seems like it's immortal.
What year did it come out?
It's eternal.
Oh, it's starting again. It doesn't give us...
Did you just say it's serving again?
The summer of 2005.
It's
Wow.
serving again.
I thought it was way older
2005?
than that.
Crazy Frog's popularity peaked in the summer of 2005. What were we doing in 2005?
But it says its popularity peaked. That doesn't mean it
okay.
came out then.
I was 10 years old.
Oh, it's a ringtone. Okay.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Oh,
10
it was
years old.
it was originally a ringtone. Remember when people had ringtones?
Oh, man.
Now it's embarrassing if your phone
mine-
rings.
My ringtone I bought it a long time ago, and I spent money on it, so I have to use it. And it's Taylor Swift, ours, and it's my husband's ringtone. So
That's pretty
that's
cute.
awesome.
really embarrassing.
That's pretty cute, actually.
My text message used to be a lightsaber, like opening up. So it'd be like,
My text message sound was the Kim Possible
oh,
beeping
that's a
sound.
good one.
Beat me
Wow.
if you wanna reach me.
I'm pretty sure I'm having these weird traumatic flashbacks to, I think there was a period in time my flip phone ringtone was Hinder, Lips of an Angel.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
I'm pretty sure. It's really good to hear your voice. I can like,
And you're like running from the other
Yes,
room to get
yes.
your phone.
here I go.
Sounds so sweet. That used to be my song. I was like, this just hits me. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sitting
A
in
man
the back of the
She
car.
really gets me.
Girlfriend.
I know, right?
I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
Things to
Right.
aspire to, you know?
Anyways.
Creed's going on tour.
Yes, and
We're going.
we're going.
We're going.
I actually am Creed.
That,
It's hard to
You're
fake to see
Creed.
you
Wow.
guys. Yeah.
Oh
Wow.
my God. Are you a shapeshifter?
Yeah. Okay.
All right, guys. Today we thought we would show you a little video and we would discuss the video.
Yes.
You know, there's a lot to say, a lot to unpack.
Yes. So let me pull it up. Let's see here. Where did I find it?
Yeah, we're just gonna kind of break it apart a little bit and help this owner out.
Here it is.
We just talk about how absolutely embarrassing it is to have guests over when you own a dog. We just had family stay with us for the last 4 days, and I cannot tell you how overstimulated I am from trying to keep Winston calm, well-behaved, and just manageable. And before I hear like, oh, you should just train your dog. You have no idea how much I prepared for this. Like, I have been reinforcing his settle training for months. I've been reinforcing his place training for months. It's something we literally work on every single day throughout the entire day. I also thought, okay, worst case scenario, he's gonna be very overexcited. He's gonna be breaking his place command. He's not gonna be listening as well. I will buy all of his favorite bones, his long-lasting bones that take him hours to go through, and he can just lay there and chew on them and be happy. This dog was so overexcited, so overstimulated, so overtired because he wouldn't allow himself to settle that he didn't want any of that. Didn't care about bone, didn't care about listening. And it's a really tough thing to practice also because we don't have guests over a lot. And I will admit, we have not been strict enough about when we do have guests over and having our guests stay very calm and like ignore Winston when they come in the door. But when we do have people over, it is a very like new, exciting thing for him. And I know it's something he has not had enough opportunity to practice. It's also not something I love practicing because it's just not a fun experience. It's so crazy because like we can practice all this place training and all this settle training and relaxation training at home, but like the second anybody comes over, like that's a whole new distraction, a whole new challenge for them. And it was just very eye-opening and insightful to see what we have to work on. I'm laughing now, but I will tell you I was crying. Part of it too is just that like I hold myself and I hold him to high standards and I expect him to be like very well behaved, and he's still young and I still have to remind myself that. So leave me any tips and tricks you may have. This is something I want to start incorporating into our training and doing little like trial runs with having family members that come over that are maybe less exciting to Winston, where he doesn't get super overexcited. We're already doing trial runs with like having people knock on the front door and ringing the doorbell. I know a lot of this will come with time and I am being patient, but it can be just very embarrassing and just very overstimulating to deal with.
All right.
I want to see I think it's a golden retriever. Yeah, she has a golden retriever.
How young does it look? I know she said like it looked young, but not that it
It
really
looks.
matters. Oh,
It's full grown.
yeah. Okay.
Full grown young
Yeah.
man.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
Young
Well,
Winston.
We'll start by saying no hate
Oh.
to this creator at all. We are simply talking about this for educational purposes.
Yeah. We
Yes.
love these videos because it
And
helps-
she's truly
helps us to help you.
asking for
No
advice.
judgments. We're just saying like how if she walked in the door and was one of our clients, how we would respond to this. So, and it's something that we hear constantly, all the time.
all the time.
Yeah.
Very common.
I mean, most of the people that come to us for training, most of the time, we're not like their first stop.
Yeah.
You know?
They've tried other things. They've tried positive reinforcement training. They've tried everything. They've put their work in and done their due diligence to better the life of their dogs, but they're still not yielding the results that they want from the training.
Yep. And I think, well, I mean, we do get a decent number of clients that we are their first stop, but I'd say a large amount are they've done training before. And a lot of the time, especially the ones I encounter with private sessions, they've done a really good job like teaching the dog everything. And I would argue that this woman probably, the dog knows, like if she's done that much work, I would assume that the dog knows place. It knows commands. It knows how to do things. It sounds like the dog is successful in performing those behaviors. The issue is that as soon as a competing motivator comes in, there's no control to be able to enforce
She'd kind
the
of mentioned that
expectations.
too. She's like when we're just like at home alone,
He's excellent.
he's totally
Yeah.
fine.
Mm-hmm.
And because that's what she's working the most. But when
Yeah.
you throw in like again like these extra stimulations, then that's when
Or something that's
Kinda
more
starts going
exciting to the
haywire.
dog than listening. And I try not to compare children and toddlers, but this
Yeah.
is like having a toddler that you're taking out and you practice sitting out at the dinner table and then you go to a restaurant and you go out and it's just way too much. It's overstimulating. So it's very similar in the fact that like when push comes to shove and there are these big distractions that ultimately she doesn't have any control over the dog, or I wouldn't say, I don't know her well enough to say any control,
But if she's saying she was crying
yes.
and it was like embarrassing, then that means that it was like very stressful.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like I think if you have a situation or a period of time, because it sounds like there were people staying with her, so they were just constantly there. And I think, if it's that long of a time and you're struggling that much that it's making you cry, like your dog is clearly going through it.
Yes.
hence also why the bones and long chew toys and stuff
Yes,
like that didn't
yeah.
work either.
Because the motivator that's more interesting to the dog
Yep.
is
Yes.
the people and the reinforcement. Even if you tell people not to pet your dog, it's just the presence of people being there.
Yep.
They can be incapable of listening or taking in that information when they're in that state of mind.
Yeah. A lot of times the reinforcement for a behavior is just purely in the action itself, so like the ability for him to engage with people, even if they're ignoring him, for him to go up and jump on them, for him to lick them, for him to, bite at their clothes. I'm assuming these
Jump on the
behaviors
couch
based
with
on
them.
like a golden retriever,
Right.
She didn't explicitly say these things, but it sounds like the dog was hyperactive, just not listening very well, very energetic, kind of a nuisance maybe. And so a lot of the reinforcement is in those behaviors just being able to be perpetuated, even if the people weren't there actively participating in it. And
Right.
it sounds like what she had said as well was that they haven't done as good of a job maybe that they could have of having people ignore him from the start. And that's again where I think if you look at training styles, so for positive reinforcement training to be successful, because I'm not trying to say it can't ever be successful, but for it to be successful, every variable has to go exactly perfect. You can't have guests that ignore you and come in and pet your dog and allow them to him to jump up on them and things like that. You have to constantly be prepared with your rewards and your procedures and I saw a video I think I might have sent it to you, of someone describing how to use positive reinforcement to keep a dog from jumping on guests coming in. And it was a 10-minute procedure, like a 10-minute long thing of throwing treats on the ground. The dog would still jump, but then you'd redirect with treats. And so all of these like very long process things that you have to do every single time.
Yeah.
And so
That's exhausting.
It's exhausting. And like she was saying, it's not fun.
Yeah,
you know,
that was one thing.
you don't want to do those things with your dog and practice with your dog because it's not fun, because it doesn't work and you don't see the progress each time.
And then you have to have your dog be full center all of the time, and you miss out on like hanging out with your guests and being present with your guests because your mind is trying to control your dog that has found a way to like completely blow you off, and then it's embarrassing, it's isolating, it's you don't want to have people over anymore. And that's probably, she said, we don't have people over that often. Is that because you just are one of those people that doesn't have a lot of people that come over quite often, or is it because you don't want to have people over?
Yeah, because now with your dog it's just easier for them to not
like
come
you
over.
Can't have people over.
Yeah. And I think to me, like when I look at a situation like that, the way that I kind of break it down in my mind is that I think the aspects that enable you to have more success when you're willing to use corrections or punishment in your training is that creates a relevancy to the dog of like your presence. Like ultimately they understand that there is certain feedback and consequences for their behaviors, and that's clear to them. And so you're able to generalize your training a little bit faster because the success is coming from the respect that you have from your dog and your relationship with them, versus if you were to go a route where you don't use consequences or punishment, you have to do far more generalizing.
Yeah.
Because you don't have that overarching sense of like, I would like you to listen, and if you don't, there would be a consequence, a fair consequence, because I've taught you, you know, your alternatives and what you should be doing. Whereas like if I'm not going to use punishment or things like that, I don't know if I'm explaining this as effectively as it's happening in my brain, but like say, you know, I need to work on my dog not jumping on guests when they come in the house. I have to go through this, you know, long process of desensitizing to them to that. I have to use rewards to counter condition and motivate them. I have to do all these different things. And then now when we're out on a leash, I have to do the same process again. And now when we go to a park, I have to do the same process again. And now when we go here, versus if in that moment, somebody comes in my house and my dog jumps on them and I correct them for that, they are now going to remember, oh, so when mom is around, it's not that she has to show me like, oh, there's other things you can do that get you rewards instead of jumping. It's just, I'm not allowed to jump.
Yeah.
And
that generalizes a lot
she
faster.
was doing with the toy or with the bones that she had. Like she was kind of using that as the motivator of like, well, just chew on that for a couple hours.
So he leaves us alone.
Yeah. And then avoid the guests.
And that's where like using enrichment or bones or chewing as our solution does not work, because the guests in this situation were highly more exciting to the dog than eating this bone. So it's like what you're saying, like correction and punishment has a place, and a lot of times people think that correction is a dirty word, and I would never correct my dog, I would never do that, that would ruin our relationship, where it actually improves your relationship because your dog knows exactly what to expect from you, and they're not left guessing. And some of this positive reinforcement or force-free ideologies are actually I feel like they're causing more stress.
Oh, 100%. I would guarantee that dog was stressed that whole time those people were there,
even
because
if
it was
appearing happy
that.
and wagging tail and jumping and
I
all of
think
those
she had mentioned
things.
that like he was so overtired
Yeah,
because he
so
couldn't calm down.
Yeah,
that's
you're right. She did say that.
Yeah, so I'm sure
so
it was.
Yes, he was overstimulated, over aroused and stressed out the whole time. And then to counter, then she was trying to use bones or food or things that would divert the overstimulation and stress rather than just mitigate it. right? And say like,
Adjusting it.
you're not allowed to behave in a way that is boisterous and out of
Yes.
control and things like that.
And it's not mean to have those boundaries set. There's nothing wrong with that. You would just want to go into it teaching your dog what a correction means. Like, you're not just going to, like in the example of using an e-collar or a prong collar, like you're not just going to pop that on when the guests come over and then only use it with guests.
Yeah.
You have to do some training to have your dog understand what it is you want from them and clarify what is causing the correction.
Yeah.
Because things can only really be fair and balanced training if your dog can learn to avoid the correction ultimately, and that is the goal.
Yeah.
Our goal is not to keep spinning in circles and correct for this for the rest of time. The goal is to correct the dog firmly when it needs corrected and then move on.
Or to even only correct it. We get a lot of times where like clients will be like, well, I only had to correct them once.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, that's good.
Yeah.
But that the goal is to not have to correct at all.
Yes.
You know, and that would be
Eventually.
nice.
Yeah.
Eventually, yeah.
But it
right,
takes
time.
consistency with learning your dog having depending on you to guide them.
Right.
And depending that you are going to enforce the behaviors that you're going to enforce.
And then I was curious as to when she was talking about like working on knocking on the door and the doorbell and stuff, what exactly they were working on, if that's jumping and barking or if that's holding
Running to the
a
door.
bed stay or whatever, right? So that was something I was kind of curious about too, but
Because
so
you
again, just addressing.
Yeah, and I think like if say they're trying to do like a place or a bed stay while they answer the door or ring the doorbell or something, again, if you especially being mindful that they have a golden retriever who finds a lot of value in engaging with people,
Yes.
right? And going up and being social and all those things if it's a typical golden retriever. If you if you have your dog on a bed stay, the doorbell goes off and that dog knows that means somebody is coming into my house. I love when people come into my house. That means they pet me. I can do all these things, right? It doesn't matter how much reinforcement and practice and training you do with them staying on that bed and they get all the treats and all that kind of stuff. They will always break that bed stay if it means they get to go and engage with the people and there's no consequence for that.
Why
They'll
would
take
you
the
want
treats
to?
until
Yeah.
they come in. They'll
Yeah.
take the treats.
Yeah.
They'll hang out. Then
Yeah.
the second that person comes in the door, they're gone.
That's why I think like with balance training in general, people need to start to have an open mind because there's only so far you're going to get in positive reinforcement training alone. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with what she's doing or the work that she's put in, but the issue that she's specifically speaking about, it sounds like there needs to be some sort of adversive incorporated in her training to help the dog understand what she wants.
Yeah.
Be less stressful for her.
Yeah, some
less stressful for the
accountability.
dog. Yeah.
It definitely sounds like she hit a wall, right?
Yeah.
Because again, it's like she said the dog's great and she's happy with when they're alone, but it's just the other issues, you know.
And
of the
people
guests coming
deserve
in.
to have people over. You deserve to invite a friend over and be like, not my house. My dog's crazy. I can't do that. And you deserve to like live a
Not
normal
feel
life.
embarrassed.
Yeah, 'cause
You
it is
know,
embarrassing.
It is embarrassing. I have a client that I just started working with where she's like, it's so embarrassing to walk my dog because she's completely out of control. She's lunging and she's barking. She's like, I literally called my husband in the middle of our walk the other day crying because it was just so stressful. And after one session of implementing a prong, she's like, I love going outside with my dog now and like being able to actually do things with her.
You end up expanding their life where like the narrative of some of these communities are like, you're going to ruin your relationship. You're going to ruin your dog, make them more aggressive, make them more nervous. And it's like, where does that happen?
Yeah,
Right.
where is it?
Yeah.
Show me. I've
Yeah.
never
Of course,
I've
you
never
can
seen it.
improperly use tools, but in the way that when you find a good trainer and you're talking to them and you're working with them, that's not going to happen.
It's
Right.
not going to happen. And in like her case as well, when I see something like that, like why wouldn't we want our dogs to find value in us? Just simply us. And the way you create value is, yes, you be a source of positive things for them and reinforcement and stuff like that. But my dogs also find value in me because I'm a very consistent source of structure and guidance. And am there to help them navigate situations so that they know what's expected of them and how to keep them safe.
Yep.
And so I am not just like a vending machine where I'm good to get things from when it's worthwhile, but then as soon as something more exciting happens, I lose value. That's not the relationship that I want to have with my dogs.
It's like an uphill battle where you're just probably never going to get the results that you want. And if you absolutely are against using any punishment for this behavior, then you have to manage the behavior by crating your dog when guests come over. If things are that severe that she's crying and at the point of the tears, where the dog just isn't out for the guests.
Yeah.
So that's unfortunately the solution if you're going to go with the route of continuing positive only training. But you could also argue that the crate itself and putting the dog away is
That's
not
what I was just going to
positive
say
only.
too.
That's negative punishment.
Yes.
And just based on a young golden retriever too, the second you put that dog away, what do you think that dog's just going to go to
Yelling,
sleep?
Barking.
barking, pawing. That's
Right.
probably why she doesn't put it in the crate because she'd
Because
rather
it's
have
just as distracting.
Yeah.
You know?
and then rather have the dog out with people where it's displaying probably inappropriate behaviors, making her feel uncomfortable enough that she is having a really hard time.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. It sucks to be in those situations,
It
but
does.
Yeah, and I think it's a shame that it's perpetuated that like most advice maybe that she would probably get on that video from people in that same community is just hang in there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Oh
not real
man,
advice. Yeah.
like shucks. Sorry.
have you tried getting medication?
Yeah. Have you tried giving him trazodone or
Right.
Benadryl when people come over?
Exactly. Maybe you just need higher value things. Maybe
Yeah.
you just need and
Hot dogs, turkey, cheese.
yeah, and again, like the goal is not to divert the excitement. The goal is to start eliminating the excitement. And you can either, and again, I take an approach with my dogs and in my life. One of the main reasons why I use punishment and why I believe in it so much is obviously I think it's extremely effective and it works well to create clarity for the dog, and that's important. I also don't expect nor want anybody else to be responsible for my dog's behavior other than me.
Yep.
So if you come to my house and you start screaming and running around and jumping up and down and trying to rile my dogs up, is that rude? And I wouldn't appreciate that. Sure. But that shouldn't dictate then, oh, now I just have no control over my dog.
Right.
Yeah.
Why did you do that?
And then we ultimately blame the person. Like she even said in her videos, and nothing's, I believe she's doing intentionally, but she said maybe guests that are less exciting to him.
Sure.
Yeah.
So ultimately, whether
good
your
catch.
guests have a really hard time respecting your boundaries, please do not pet my dog. Please ignore them. We also have to be able to set the dog up for real life scenarios where people are going to come in and they're going to ignore your rules.
Yeah.
Grandma loves to
She
give
has-
the dog cookies,
Right.
and the dog needs to learn to listen to you and not people outside of you.
Yeah. She's another one of those cases where it's like she has a very good looking dog. Like it's gonna happen out in public. It's gonna happen.
People
in
love
the
a
house.
golden retriever,
Yeah.
man.
And especially like a young one too. I mean, like
They're
so
cute.
especially ones that are excited to see
Yes.
them as well. You know, as
But-
golden retrievers are. So yeah, she's gonna run into that for sure.
It's still
Everyone
okay
will.
to like ask guests not to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to be a little bit more firm with people and be like, hey, I really am working on something. And if you care about me as a friend and you know what I'm working through, you will not disrespect what I'm asking you to do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the people that continue to disrespect what you do maybe shouldn't come over.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
if you're really, really struggling with that aspect of things, but ultimately also creating a dog that's bomb proof with whoever comes over. Uncle Jerry walks through the door with a pocket full of treats, your dog has to ignore Uncle Jerry and listen to you.
Yeah. It sounds like if she's going to go down the path of trying to continue to use force-free methods, which again, you could argue is anything ever really force-free, but anyways, and not want to implement corrections or punishment, you need to really step up your management game.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like, is the dog on leash? You know what I mean? I have other questions like the dog should be on leash. The dog should be You should have some way of controlling the dog when you have guests in the house. You can use an anchor with that leash to tie the dog back so that it has to stay near its place or its bed. You could use your crate a little bit more. You have to get firmer with your environmental aspects of, no, you can't touch him. You can't play with him. You can't baby talk him. You can't do these things. Because again, if you're not going to give the feedback to your dog to allow them to have more clarity in those situations of what they need to ignore and not ignore, then we really have to rely a lot more heavily on everybody else around to create the environment where the dog isn't getting reinforcement for doing those behaviors. So you kind of have to, I feel like she's sitting a little bit too much in the middle where there's not enough management, and she's not willing to compromise or compensate with corrections or punishment. And so if we're not willing to implement those little pieces to address the behaviors directly, then we have to really ramp up the management side of it.
Yeah.
And like we have to physically stop our dog from finding success or gratification within the behavior you're trying to eliminate. So literally keeping them on leash and not allowing them to go over to guests when they come over. Like I have a puppy client I worked with the last year, and he's super excitable. And she wasn't at the point where she was ready to like really dive into his telling guests no. So I had her just put the dog away for that early stages of his life because he was just a puppy. We weren't really on to the e-collar just yet. And the dog had to learn that when guests come through the door, it wasn't for him solely. And because we have a very cute puppy, like a golden retriever, people are going to naturally come in and be like, oh my God. Hi. And then the dog's like, oh my gosh, this is all
They're
for
here
me.
for me. Yeah.
And then we, classically condition that guest mean, I get something exciting. And that's very powerful. That creates literally neurons in the brain and pathways for dogs. And it's a pattern. So.
And judging by like looking more at the dog on that account and stuff, like he's mature enough to get corrected for things. Like there's certainly like you're describing, like with my own dogs that I raised from puppies, with clients that have younger puppies. Yes, when they're younger and I'm not really doing corrections for things just quite yet, I always recommend we go heavier on the management side of things. I'm not saying you go in with corrections right away with a young puppy, but there is like a period where you start to like meld them together, So there's a lot of management in the beginning and environmental control and making sure you're trying to dictate how people interact with your dog, different things like that. But ultimately you hit a point of maturity where you just have to start adding more communication and clarity into the situations to clearly help them understand what behaviors are off limits and what behaviors are okay at that point.
And it just, like I said earlier, it can just be like an uphill battle if we're not willing to be the person that our dog needs us to be. And if we're always in the mindset, I will never correct him, I will never use punishment, inevitably are we being a little bit selfish and thinking like, I don't want to do that, where our dog is having a really hard time. And utilizing punishment or correction in that whatever methods you're using can help the dog really understand exactly what's expected of them. So we avoid the drama and we can have guests over. We can have our dog be very well behaved, and all the work we put into our dog can be shown.
Yeah. And I think it's maybe another reason too why some people stray away from doing that is because there's a connotation of like corrections equate to like anger or like frustration or things like that. And it's interesting, I have a couple clients that I'm working with right now where I've had I have to remind them that when we're giving our no's and then we're doing corrections that it's just monotone. There's no you know what I mean, like there's nothing like that. It's just like calm. And I had a client actually on her, she wasn't doing this herself, but she even mentioned, she's like, I noticed that like throughout the training process, like she's like, well, you especially, that like you're so calm and like you speak to the dog so calmly and quietly, you don't raise your voice. She's like, and it's just so nice to see that like the dog still listens even when like we're not having to raise our voice and yell at them. She's like, I have a friend who every time we go over to her house and she's trying to get her dog on place, she's using treats and she's going, place, 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 place. And she's just screaming at the dog and throwing treats everywhere. And she's like, and it's pure chaos and like, it's wild. And it is an interesting way of looking at it, because if your dog isn't listening to you, it's not because they can't hear you. You don't need to yell at them. you don't need to raise your voice
about what you're saying.
Exactly. You don't need to get angry. Anger has zero place in dog training.
And is that fun for her friend? No.
Probably not.
Probably not.
It's
whenever someone's raising their voice, they're probably not having fun.
Yeah,
No.
it like raises your cortisol levels, it raises your dog's cortisol levels, and it causes more stress when we're like trying to play the nice guy. And then when push comes to shove and things happen in the real world, we don't have any basis to fall back on, because our dog is like, I don't take you seriously. Like, I don't care.
I think it's, I've found that a lot of times the clients that like do yell are the ones that are either rushing it or are the ones that are getting frustrated because, again, they're not seeing the results, or they're just not understanding why the dog isn't doing it.
Yeah.
So they're resorting to kind of like getting frustrated and yelling.
Yeah.
And so once you can kind of like train yourself to kind of like take a deep breath and just like ask the dog to do it and then have the appropriate punishment or not, right? Then it's something where it's just like you can have a lot more fun with it. And then that's when you start seeing the success as well, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't mean that we would have to completely eliminate food or treats or positive reinforcement, because balanced training is a mix of positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement. Like we utilize all 4 quadrants of the learning theory, and we are able to communicate with the dog so much more effectively in that way.
Positive punishment is such a small portion of the training that we do, honestly.
Right.
And it should be a very small portion of the training if you're doing it correctly, because you don't teach with positive punishment. You don't, like, that's purely there to enforce non-compliance for something, set a standard, and also to eradicate behaviors that you don't want. Majority of the teaching process is negative reinforcement and positive reinforcement. And so it's a very small portion of it is corrections if you're utilizing corrections appropriately, your timing is accurate, and it's clear to the dog.
It's sometimes a shame that people completely refuse to acknowledge the benefits of like punishment and training, or you just think sometimes you're on a higher horse and you would never do that, and that's just what uneducated trainers do. And it's like sometimes I feel like some of these methods that we apply, we're more educated than the force-free or positive-only trainers in a sense, in a way.
Yeah.
Not saying
I
that
think we're more realistic.
Yes, more realistic.
Yeah, because like I think what's interesting is like when I've listened to high-level force-free trainers that have great accomplishments.
Yeah, like Susan Garrett.
Susan Garrett is one.
Training.
I listened to her podcast with Ivan.
Yes.
And it was super fascinating. Her techniques are very creative, very interesting. I appreciate the work that she's done a lot. But I do think, and she even admits on there that with one of her dogs, if she had been willing to use punishment, the dog would have had far more freedom far sooner, would have had a better quality of life. I'm paraphrasing. But because she wanted to, she puts more of an emphasis, and I respect this on a personal level. She puts more of an emphasis on the intellectual aspect of the puzzle. Of like, how could I do this without using punishment? It's more of like a challenge to her. It feels
very
like
experienced, very educated woman that has had decades of experience doing so.
Yeah.
So.
And she's like, I want to stop this behavior. How could I maybe or I want to build this behavior. I want to create this, whatever. And she enjoys the intellectual aspect of trying to come up with a way of doing it just
Not gonna
through
make
force
a game
free.
out of this.
Exactly. And
She
that's
enjoys the challenge.
that's cool. I think that we need people like that to be
Absolutely.
able to advance that part of dog training. And I respect it. And I think it's great. When it comes to realistic application of dogs as pets living in the
Yes.
real world,
Obedience, pet
I
training.
just don't think that methodology is sustainable or applicable at all.
I think like my point being like it's not that I think that we're smarter than people that do this, but we take the emotion out of it. And sometimes when you lead with emotion, you're not thinking logically, and it's impossible to reason a person into logic when they're on an emotional side of things.
Yes.
You can't do it. You
No.
can't.
No, you can't. It's when you have someone who feels bad about correcting a dog. It doesn't matter. I could talk to you till I'm blue in the face about the logic behind why it's important to correct a dog for jumping on somebody. But if you just are feeling bad about it, logic won't do anything for you. It's still not, logic will not negate your emotions.
Yes.
And so it's something that I think as a whole, you know, I think it's an issue as well with people's parenting. Like there's certain, I think, a culture overall of just the idea that we can try to like shelter and avoid stress under every circumstance and always do what makes us feel good, whether that's detrimental to the dog or not, I think is just a very dangerous ideology that's permeated, unfortunately, through most of the culture in the United States.
Yes. Yeah.
That it's more so work that needs to be done there with really prioritizing, like if you call yourself a dog lover, really actually prioritizing the dog and their needs and not just what makes you feel good as a human who owns or interacts with a dog.
I want to kiss you and hug you, and I want to do things on my terms.
wanna
Because
get
I
you
kiss
really
you and hug
fat.
you, I'm such yeah.
Yeah, and I want
wanna
to feed you.
because I'm
Yeah.
such a good dog mom that I just want to do all this. But like your dog doesn't need you to be their best friend. Your dog needs you to be their leader.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying earlier is like I want my dogs to find value in me because they feel secure that they have somebody who is giving them feedback on stuff and holding them accountable for things.
Like we talked about a couple podcasts ago, like there are sometimes kids that they don't trust their own parents because their parents aren't the dependable person and they can't go like, yes, you might be the fun carnival dad and like you take your kids to go do fun things, but would your kids come to you if they had an issue? And a lot of the kids, like if you're solely based on fun and games and things, like they don't feel safe with you.
They don't take you seriously.
No.
You know, like if you don't ever assert boundaries and expectations and standards and then hold them to those standards. I mean, we've all worked jobs and had bosses. If your boss doesn't have certain standards that they're willing to enforce, you don't respect them.
Yeah.
You know what I
Or
mean?
If they're enforcing too much and being too nitpicky, who wants to work for you? And who wants, you can't grow, you can't do anything. So you have to look at both sides of the spectrum of like, we can't micromanage our dogs and be super aggressive and mean and, you know, yell at them all the time, but we can't be too lenient and be like, oh, whatever they want. I would never punish them.
Yes.
It's like, you have to have a balance.
The key word, balance.
It's like a SpongeBob thing.
Yep.
Balance.
Yeah, we don't have a ton of like, even again, like our curriculum here, we teach what, like 3 commands.
Yeah.
And then we address nuisance behaviors as necessary and, you know, have certain ways we go about addressing behavioral issues and stuff like that as kind of a mixture. But it's like we don't have a ton of standards for our dogs in that I'm not teaching them 20 commands. I'm not teaching them, oh, when this dog is around, you have to look at me nonstop. I'm not throwing in all of these extraneous like ways to micromanage the dog in the situation. I have a few rules, a few standards, a few expectations, and you will be firmly held to those standards.
Yep.
And then everything else,
Yeah.
be a dog.
Be a dog.
Be a dog, you know? I don't want to have to micromanage my dog. The same way with kids. Like, I have a stepson. We don't have a ton of rules, but the rules that we have, we're very firm on. And then he knows very well what the boundaries are and where he functions within that. And it's a very healthy environment because it's dependable, it's predictable. You know what I mean? Like he knows exactly where the edges are of everything.
You draw on the walls.
Yeah.
You know,
Right,
like
right.
You could almost like in efforts to be this positive person and have all of this like happiest experience with your dog, you can end up having a very toxic relationship with them. And then it all goes to shit and you're like, why isn't this working? I'm doing everything. And then you either give up or you just get so overwhelmed that like you're never ever seeing any success. And like she in the video, she's like, well, I know it's going to take time. It's going to take time. Just like it doesn't have to. Like you could probably squash some of this within a month if you used punishment in an effective way.
Yeah. There's like, for some reason in the dog training world, it's like if it takes long for whatever reason, it's like the only aspect of life where something taking longer and choosing the longer avenue is like where you get merit. You know what I mean? It's like if I have
2 years.
Yeah, it's like, would you take your car to a mechanic that's like, oh, it's going to take me 6 months to fix this, but because it takes me such a long time, you know, I'm doing it the right way. I'm doing it the right way. Versus a guy who's like, oh, this is a simple fix. I can use these additional tools to make this work for you. I'll have it done by the end of the day. Why in the world would you go to the guy who's using, he's like, I don't use power tools. I'm not cheating. I don't skip steps here. It'd be like somebody telling you can't use the internet to research.
right.
And
Read a
somehow
book.
if you use the internet as part of your research, I'm not saying get shitty sources, but saying you can't use the internet at all because somehow that's skipping a step and that's cheating and that's this and that's that. No, it's just quicker and it's more effective and it's a better use of my time.
Yeah.
The same way that using balanced training is. It's quicker, it's more effective, and it's better use of my time, and I can help far more people than if my time is sucked up by creating all of these, you know, extraneous procedures of how to throw treats on the ground to just hopefully maybe your dog won't jump on your guest. Like, it just seems silly to me.
And then you have success in one area and you're like, oh my God, that was great. Like we saw a lot that the dog did correctly. And then we take him into a new environment and it's all shit.
You have to do it all over again.
Yeah. And it's like, we just have these pot cakes that have been with us and the like representative of the pot cakes came and he was like, he's like, honestly, when we first started this process, some of the people from the rescue were not on board with balanced training methods. And he was like, I explained it to them, like this would take years for like 6 and 7 to have breakthroughs and 6 and 7 to be anywhere near what they were when they left our facility.
Oh, yeah.
And we got those results and a lot of stuff like almost within the week. And then their full success story was a month and they're still in training. They're still working on things, but they're at a place that was so much faster than they would have come from. And that you could argue that's absolutely cruel to leave your dog in that state of mind for years.
Oh, yeah.
That's cruel.
When a lot of
Oh,
people,
it absolutely
a lot
is.
of people, if they have to wait 6 months, it's like they're motivated for the first 2, and then they're just like, again, the success that they're seeing is very minimal or like not at all, and so they kind of like lose hope, and then then they like kind of like start giving up, and then you start getting off track, and then it's just like, okay, well, what was that couple months even worth?
Yeah.
You know?
And your dog's life, I'm sorry to say, is so short, and we don't have nearly as much time with our dogs that we deserve on this planet. And why would you want to spend like a year, 2, 3 years resenting or struggling with your dog when you can knock those things out and enjoy your life with them so much more and do so much more? And you can look
And
back
they
on
could
their
enjoy
life.
it.
Yeah, and you
Yeah.
can be like, wow, I'm really glad that I was able to set the boundaries right away. And now I have a dog that I can do anything with and I love. And I don't resent them.
It's not going to ruin your relationship.
Yeah.
I promise.
Yeah.
That's like the biggest lie out there.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know where people
As long as the
formulated
communication
that,
is
where
clear.
it came from. Yeah, the same way that like, again, I know we try to avoid the dog and kid crossovers, but it's like, does establishing like boundaries and discipline with a child ruin your relationship? No. You talk to any psychologist out there and the
will tell you.
kids that tend to struggle the most are the ones with an it's not stable in their household. They don't have a steady form of leadership or parent in place. And so they really struggle because they don't have the guidance that they need. They don't have the predictability in their life, the routines, all of that kind of stuff. You know, it's so important for the development of a child. And you think about the development of a dog. I mean, you look at any animal really that exists, their own parents don't like desensitize them to things. Like in my head, I had like a flash to like, you have ducks and like they have ducklings. Do you think they're like, okay, kids, everyone, let's dip one foot in and see how the water feels. Now we're just going to go in a little bit. No, they're like, it's go time, man. Cross this fucking river or
get sucked into the drain.
Yeah, like this is like that's how animals
behind.
Are. You know,
Yeah.
there's no easing them into things. It's you do it, you figure it out, and then we move on.
And corrections.
There's no emotion.
Exist naturally in the animal world, in the animal kingdom, in the dog packs. Corrections exist because if a dog
100%.
steps out of line, they need corrected, and then they're like, "Oh, okay."
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, to the woman in the video, I hope that you find success in whatever facet you're trying to achieve it in. I think that I would strongly suggest, you won't see this, but I would strongly suggest looking into quality balance training, because I think you will find that it will expedite your results and what you're looking for and the quality of life you have, your dog has, you have together. It will expedite that quite a bit.
You start the process of like questioning and asking questions, calling a training facility, looking at their reviews, speaking to a trainer, doing a meet and greet, and kind of easing yourself into the mentality that maybe we try balance training. You know, maybe we try to see what we can accomplish when I'm able to be the person my dog needs me to be. Instead of shielding yourself like, oh, we can't ever do that. That would ruin our relationship or him with the guest.
Yep. We tried a few times. It didn't work. Overwhelming, overstimulating for both people.
Yes.
So, yeah, don't give up.
Dog training doesn't have to be like stressful and make you
shouldn't be
cry,
stressful.
and it doesn't have to be that way. Like you could have, I mean, I have clients that come in with some of the dog's a mess. Okay. Like just an utter mess, reactive, aggressive, anxious, resource guarding, like the amount of like, you can feel the tension between the dogs and the owners
when
and
they're
the
in the
family
lobby.
and the dynamic and the tension between a married couple because of the dog. Like we have people coming in that are like at their end. This is the end. Like they're fucking over it. They're sick of this dog. They're sick of the behaviors. Like they've tried everything, right? And they just get to this point, and still there's no moments where like the training sucks for them.
Yeah.
Like your training should not feel defeating. It should not feel like it's not working. It should not feel like you should, as you're going through the training process with your dog, the rates of progress might be different, and some dogs may struggle in some areas, but you as the owner and the handler should be able to feel like this is working. Like I see it.
Success.
Yeah, like I see success.
On my journey with my dog. Like everything might not be perfect, but let's say we have one goal a week and we focus on that one goal a week, and we're seeing, okay, next goal. And we're not stuck in this limbo of, well, it will be a couple months until Winston can have my dad come over because my dad is, boisterous and excited. Just like, no, we can make that a goal this week.
Yeah.
Stop delaying your success with your dog. Stop delaying the life you could have with your dog because you're scared to tell them no.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can do it. They can do it.
You can do it.
Yeah.
Winston, is it Winston? Watson?
Yeah,
Winston? Winston, you can do it.
Yeah,
You can do it,
Winston.
And I want you to
Winston.
listen to your mom, Winston.
Yeah, Winston.
Pull it together, Winston.
Yeah, Winston.
No making... yeah, Winston.
Yeah, Winston. Yeah, Winston. Oh my gosh.
Winston probably has the Crazy Frog song looped in his head.
Yeah, it was a perfect start. Yeah.
Bing, bing. That was going
Wow,
off.
wow, wow, wow.
Yeah. That's what's in these
He's
dogs'
the crazy
brain.
frog.
Just nonstop.
Yeah. I think that was
Well,
hopefully helpful.
Well, hope
Think
this
that
has
helps.
helped.
thanks for joining us
Hopefully
today,
we
guys.
see some breakthroughs on your page.
Smash that like button.
No, what will happen on social media, what always happens is that someone's struggling with their dog, and if they choose to do balance training, just suddenly their dog's getting better and they'll never talk about it again.
Yeah.
Because everyone is so shitty on the internet about balance training.
They really are.
You will get ripped to pieces, which
Sorry,
again,
you got us.
I know. And again, sometimes I think the future of balance training depends on people that don't give a shit and talk about it anyways.
Yes.
And
Like
talk
us.
about why it's valuable, why it's important, and don't really care what everybody else has to say that doesn't have any experience.
We've been called the trailer park dog trainers.
Yeah.
Did that stop us?
That didn't
I bet he
stop
thought
us.
that was a real good one.
He did. He really felt like that was a good one.
Yeah, it's kind of funny.
That's our new title for this
Yeah.
podcast.
The trailer park.
Let's just lean
Boys.
full tilt into it.
Yeah.
Trailer park dog trainers.
Yes.
Which, like, how offensive. There's
Right.
nothing wrong with living in a trailer.
Yeah.
That's what I was
Yeah,
going to say.
what was
Have
he
you
trying to
seen
get
the
at?
trailers?
Yeah,
The nice
like-
trailers. Like,
I know.
I would rather live in that.
What are you
than the
trying to
house I'm in.
say,
Yeah.
sir? Excuse you. Yeah, it was.
These people are fucking idiots. And we were literally sitting there like, oh, Steve is here in the room and he used to be reactive. And they're like, you don't know what you're talking about, little lady.
I gotta go back and watch that.
of you training protection dogs. When have we ever said we do that?
Yeah.
We train pet dogs.
This weak-minded training.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm gonna go back and watch those.
Okay.
Sounds like some good entertainment.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was oh man. Well, anyways.
All right. Thanks for joining us today.
All right. Yes.
Bye
Hopefully that helps.
guys. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bing bing.
Bing, 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 bing.